Hi, I'm Howard Owen. We're here at the Brook Diner, and I'm here today to talk about The Sun Also Rises. I'm a local novelist. I live about a mile from here. My 16th novel, Annie's Bones, came out earlier this year, and my 17th novel, Scuffletown, the 7th in the Willie Black Mystery series set in Richmond, will come out in January. But enough about me. I want to talk about The Sun Also Rises. I've read The Sun Also Rises 3 times over the years. I read it in 1969 as a college sophomore. I took an English literature class. I was an indifferent student, and I realized 2 days in advance that I was supposed to have read one of several novels that were on the list. I went to the library and I found the shortest one, which happened to be The Sun Also Rises. It knocked me out. I had read Hemingway's short stories before that, but it was such an incredible book. I read it again in 1979 when I was getting my master's at VCU. Bryant Mangum taught a course in Ernest Hemingway and Scott Fitzgerald. I went back, I read it, I loved it again. And reading it again now, 40 years later, it's still an amazing novel. It is one of the great American novels of the 20th century. The Sun Also Rises was Hemingway's first novel. It was published in 1926, and a lot of people say it was his best novel. It's set in Paris and in Pamplona in the Basque region of Spain. The main characters are a group of sometimes feckless American and British expats wandering around Europe and acting badly in the 1920s. It is the part that's in Paris is a wonderful portrait of Paris in the 20s, and you could still see the same restaurants and bars there now. Places like Le Dôme and Le Select and the Café de la Paix, they're still there. You can still go to these places. But the part that most people remember is the part that said in Pamplona. Hemingway had been going to Pamplona for the bullfights since 1923. In 1925, he went there with his wife Hadley and a group of friends and frenemies. And after the fiesta and the bullfights were over, he sat down and he wrote The Sun Also Rises, one of the great American novels of the 20th century, in 8 weeks. It was published the next year, and it was immediately praised by critics for its crisp style. Hemingway was very sparing with adjectives. He was very sparing with the interior punctuation. He wrote strong declarative sentences. And decades, now almost a century, of writers have been, for better or worse, trying to emulate this form of post-World War I writing. The main characters are Jake Barnes, Lady Brett Ashley, who is in love with Jake, but because Jake suffered an unfortunate injury in World War I, they are not able to consummate their relationship. Mike Campbell, who's engaged to Brett Ashley, and Robert Cohn, among others. I have to say that reading this book in the 21st century, it is in part, Jake Barnes, the protagonist, is stunningly anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic, and chauvinistic. If you read this book with a 21st century sensibility, you will be offended by this. You have to read it in the sense of the time. I mean, I don't damn it any more than I would damn Shakespeare for his portrayal of Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. It comes from the 1920s, and that's the way it was. I wonder if Hemingway would have written Jake Barnes a little differently if he had written this book after the Holocaust, but we'll never know. It is, in spite of that caveat, a great work, one of the great novels of the last century. And I'm going to read a little short passage from it here. Hemingway liked blood sports. He loved boxing. He loved big game hunting. He especially liked bullfighting. He liked sports where you actually put your ass on the line, where you could be hurt or even killed. And this, what I'm going to read here, is about bullfighting. And you'll pardon me if I butcher a couple of the Spanish pronunciations here. We got into Pamplona late in the afternoon, and the bus stopped in front of the Hotel Montoya. Out in the plaza, they were stringing electric light wires to light the plaza for the fiesta. A few kids came up when the bus stopped, and a customs officer for the town made all the people getting down from the bus open their bundles on the sidewalk. We went into the hotel, and on the stairs I met Montoya. He shook hands with us, smiling in his embarrassed way. "Your friends are here," he said. "Mr. Campbell?" "Yes, Mr. Cone and Mr. Campbell and Lady Ashley." He smiled as though there were something I would hear about. "When did they get in?" "Yesterday. I saved you the rooms you had." "That's fine. Did you give Mr. Campbell the room on the plaza?" "Yes, all the rooms we looked at." "Where are our friends now?" "I think they went to the Pelota." "And how about the bulls?" Montoya smiled. "Tonight," he said, "tonight at 7 o'clock, they bring in the Villar bulls, and tomorrow come in the Miuras. Do you all go down?" "Oh, yes. They've never seen the Sansa Hanada." Montoya put his hand on my shoulder. "I'll see you there." He smiled again. He always smiled as if bullfighting were a very special secret between the two of us, a rather shocking but very deep secret that we knew about. He always smiled as though there was something lewd about the secret to outsiders, but that it was something that we understood. It would not do to expose it to people who would not understand. "Your friend, he is aficionado too?" Montoya smiled at Bill. "Yes, he came all the way from New York to see the San Fermines." "Yes," Montoya politely disbelieved, "but he's not aficionado like you." He put his hand on my shoulder again embarrassedly. "Yes," I said, "he is a real aficionado, but he's not aficionado like you are." Afición means passion. An aficionado is one who is passionate about the bullfights. All the good bullfighters stayed at Montoya's hotel. That is, those with afición stayed there. The commercial bullfighters stayed once, perhaps, and then did not come back. The good ones came each year. In Montoya's room were their photographs. The photographs were dedicated to Juanito Montoya or to his sister. The photographs of bullfighters Montoya had really believed in were framed. Photographs of bullfighters who had been without afición Montoya kept in a drawer of his desk. They often had the most flattering inscriptions, but they did not mean anything. One day Montoya took them all out and dropped them in the wastebasket. He did not want them. We often talked about bulls and bullfighters. I had stopped at the Montoya for several years. We never talked for very long at a time. It was simply the pleasure of discovering what we each felt. Men would come in from distant towns, and before they left Pamplona, stop and talk for a few minutes with Montoya about bulls. These men were aficionados. Those who were aficionados could always get rooms even when the hotel was full. Montoya introduced me to some of them. They were always very polite at first, and it amused him very much that I should be an American. Somehow, it was taken for granted that an American could not have afición. He might simulate it or confuse it with excitement, but he could not really have it. When they saw that I had afición, and there was no password, no set question that could bring it out, rather it was a sort of oral spiritual examination with the questions always a little on the defensive and never apparent. There was the same embarrassed putting the hand on the shoulders, or a buen hombre, but nearly always there was the actual touching. It seemed as though they wanted to touch you to make it certain. And that's Hemingway. And that's what I have to say about The Sun Also Rises.
Richmond, keep reading.
Cut.
You know, this was one of my mother's favorite books, which my mother, if you would have known her, you would have never, ever thought that this was, and she loved bullfighting. But it was really, she read the book, which inspired her to go to bullfights.
I wonder if this was the start of all these Americans going to Pamplona with the running of the bulls.
I probably so.
Because they have the running of the bulls in there. One guy gets killed, and they've been probably been doing that forever.
How the story ends. I presume it leaves you with a kind of sense of the protagonist facing up to the fate that the universe means for all of us.
The sun also rises. Is from Ecclesiastes, and basically it's like the theme is you have all these crazy people running around, and we think we're doomed, but the sun comes up and the sun goes down anyway. I mean the juxtaposition of these expats with too much money, who drink too much and act badly, and the peasants who do the same thing every day, year in and year out, forever, is an enduring thing in there. But Lady Brett, who sleeps around a lot, seduces this young bullfighter in there and kind of corrupts him, which is kind of like kind of the whole thing.
I actually read. It wasn't the first time I'd read it, but I was just a year out.